The large good angel. This is Voodoo Part 2. Um, so I'll be reading on Voodoo Part 2. And join me at EdenZone.net. The large good angel. The object of magic is to affect the soul, either of the victim or of the prosecutor. The soul is called the Gras Bon Ange, the large angel, and is manifested in the shadow and breath. It is coexistent with the T-Bon Ange, the little good angel, which is equated with the penumbra, the spirit, the conscience. It is sometimes called the zombie. Both inhabit the corpus cadaver, or corpse body. The weak element in this ensemble is the gros bon ange, without which the other two elements lose contact. It is easily infected with emotions, especially those of superstition, resentment, envy, and anger, lust by sudden shocks of death in the family, a failure in business, or for being lifted or jilted. It can also be stimulated magically by one of casting spells, the use of magical powers, or of complicated pieces of apparatuses called wanga. For instance, a girl being courted will try to hook her man by serving him dishes in which she has put a piece of bacon she has worn in her shoe for 3 days running, or she'll nail her hair clippings, even her menstrual blood. If she was cold towards him, he may discreetly blow on her a powder composed of dried hummingbird flesh and a large number of potent herbs. If she is living with another man, however, he will use a particular powder called break the household, which causes quarrels. He can to defeat an enemy, he can leave recourse to another kind of leaf powder, often obtaining dead man's bones in cemetery, earth, and hell to cause paralysis, blindness, impotence, or death. Smearing the door of an enemy's house with human dung causes much anxiety. To dig in the bones, up the bones of the father's corpse, or even worse, to highly sophisticated kinds of black magic and necromancy can be performed with them. Magic is nothing less than underhand intention given symbolic form and used to create an expectation in its victim. Given the atmosphere in Haiti, nearly everyone expects the worst from some of his neighbors and hopes for the best for himself. There are two dangers in using magic, however. If improperly used or sent back by a strong magician onto its perpetrator, it can cause what is called shock in return, which is difficult to cope with. On the other hand, it may be also powerful that it needs constant attention. The entity embodying this kind of magic is called a baka, and the owner of the supernatural monster must be prepared to offer it the life of one of its relatives every year, unless he is to be devoured by him himself. Bakas are greedy and are used by greedy men to gain power and money. The service they require shows that paranormal is not far in the offing. The invisibles. Paranoia is defined as a form of insanity marked by fixed delusions, especially those of grandeur, pride, and persecution. One on a level, it can be said that it must at women. On the level, on one level, it can be said that its most innocuous form of common soak, or that Haitians call mawas sang, bad blood caused by failure or expectation and authority, and with a plentiful Voodoo priest is called in to diagnose and treat this disorder. The diagnosis is usually straightforward, and the main treatment is to wash the patient's hand with water in which 7 to 21 leaves of different plants have been shredded. This cools the head and brings the gross bon on back to its proper place. A counter magic is exploited to influence the person the soaker to is involved with. But sometimes the diagnosis and treatment are both at fault, and the victim is left with his mania until he is lucky, which he frequently is. He has a vision in which his malady is personified as a spirit. The spirit prescribes a remedy for the illness, such as a diet of charred maize and water, but remains with the patient even when the cure is completed. But it also gives a formula by which it can be invoked in the future, such as looking at a candle flame or reciting the Pater Noster backwards 7 times, and this allows the patient to keep set up as a small time oracular priest or priestess, diagnosing and treating illness, giving advice, and going back and doing black and white magic for fee. The case histories of these voodooists show that disordered emotions of long standing can be precipitated by an apparently trivial incident. A man may smoke a cigarette or drink a cup of coffee given him by a neighbor he has long mistrusted and who has given him a meaningful glance. He goes off in agitation because historically dissociated, becomes hysterical, disassociated, and vomits up such unlikely emblems of his discomfort as lizards, pieces of bark, or a large and poisonous centipede. This is equivalent to a possession, and the vomit brings him back to himself. He then puts what he has vomited in a bottle and taps it up for with rum. It becomes his guardian spirit and oracle, while the liquor can be used as a universal medicine for those in need of treatment. Other sufferers vomit up needles, which they later use in their magical practice, swallowing them when the spirit leaves them in readiness for the next occasion. Still others go sleepwalking and pick up interestingly shaped stones in which the spirits leads them. These stones are placed in saucers. Hot rum is poured over them and set aflame, and the liquor again uses as a medicine, usually an embrocation. What happens in these and similar cases is that the gross bon ang has externalized its infection, which is then used homeopathically to treat the infections of other sufferers. Initiation into voodoo follows a parallel course under the guidance of a priest and in the context of a traditional rite. There are several reasons for being initiated. The novice may be suffering from a seismite or from a series of calamities when in his daily life, which the priest diagnoses as come from the gods. If he has failed to observe his religious duty, equally the illness or calamity may be sent on him by his dead parents, whose soul have been living in the waters of penitence and have finished their term there. The duty of their descendant is to bring them out of the waters and install them upon the family altar. His persecutors are now not the living, who can be countered by black magic, but dead and the lower, the invisible. In fact, who are the principles of grandeur, pride, and power? And who are only appropriated by a man changing his own attitude to life? Freud noted a similar course of events in Europeans who make a pact with the devil, typically after their fathers had died. He saw it as a consequence of guilt and despair, which transforms the object of mourning into a source of comfort and power. Interestingly enough, he also made these observations soon after his own father had died. If the invisibles plague men, therefore they do so because they also represent the unused faculties and energies which exist in everyone behind the bars of repression, which make themselves felt when the agent of this repression has died. Initiation into voodoo not only placates the invisibles, but transforms them from repressors of desire into helpers for action. The process of initiation the world over is the undergoing of a mock death, the experience of a rebirth. It is the same in Haiti, where a not uncommon rider is added, that the death is preceded by an illness and the rebirth is seen as a cure. The state and future of the novice is diagnosed in terms of his entity which is plaguing him. If his ancestors are calling upon him to serve them, he can only do so if he serves the lower also. The problem then is which lower he is to serve. There are, for a start, several nations of Loa, so called because they originated as gods of the various African tribes, whose members came to Haiti. Slavery mixed these tribes so well that their descendants all came to be Haitian, and only the gods retained their nationalities. Those nations are called Rada from Dahomey, Wango from Angola, Senegal from Senegal, Congo, Igbo, and Naga. There is also an indigenous nation, the revengeful Petroloa, who appear to stem both from the Aboriginal Indian population of the island and from the slave population. Families tend to serve the same nation of gods, each of which is a pantheon. The novice may already know which lower destiny has devoted him to, or the priest may have to diagnose it by examining the novice disorder and matching it to the known character of a suitable lower. The lower are in fact character patterns which can be seen working both in man and in nature. Ugan, the blacksmith god, for instance, is a marital demiurge whose hammer is a thunderbolt, and who controls the head of those who are strong minded. But he may also patronize those who strongly resent strong mindedness in others, according to the adage. The character of the Loa is that of his mount. In either case, the Loa is invoked to settle a disorder and to lay the foundation for future development. For initiate for an initiate may become possessed by many lower during the course of his life. Once accepted for initiation, the novice has to buy the magical and ritual apparatus for the ceremony, and during the week he goes out nightly to the preparatory rites. During these, songs and prayers are intoned which speak of the time of misery which is passing, of the spirit unsheathing itself from the body, of the novice as patterns, patients whose cure will benefit the dead, and of the mapu tree, haunt by evil spirits, being felled at the blows of the right, and interspersed with these songs and prayers as the frequent exclamation, "There is malice, oh." On the last evening, their heads are not washed, and on the Saturday morning, they are formally inducted into a room where they will be secluded for another week. The songs at this time speak of novices being saddled ready for the lower, like a horse for its rider, the usual phrase describing a possession. Strips of palm leaves are shredded to protect the master and the novices. These strips are called azan, after a female loa said to be a traitor and a cannibal. A song and a rite to Grand Boy's great tree is performed. The novices are turned brusquely till they are giddy and then thrust onto their chamber. Inside, they lay upon their left sides, eating white foods, which are offered to the dead. They learn more passwords and secret gestures, songs, and prayers. The heads are again washed with leaves, and everything is done to prepare them for possession by the Lord, in whose point they are lying. The next Saturday, fowls are sacrificed and parts of them placed in a govi or ritual pot, together with the novice's hair and nail clippings. And he goes, Bon Ange is suffered into the Babi. In the temple, cauldrons are set up over small fires, and a mixture of flour and oil boil inside them. The novices are called out, swathed in white sheets. A lump of the boiling mixture is pressed into their hands, and their arms and legs are passed through the flames. They return to their seclusion into the sun. Sunday morning, when they come out barefoot, dressed in white collars of beads among their necks, representing the lower, and hats on their heads to protect them from erring spirits. They are seated at a table under a white sheet or baptized with a leaf dipped into water and given their new names in Voodoo. The drums strike up, they dance, and the Loa possesses their new servants. After 40 days, during which they are forbidden to wash or change their clothes in order to absorb the force of the ritual, they and the great priest go into a dark room where he calls up the spirits of those ancestors they wish to serve. Curious flapping sounds are heard as he draws his souls out of the waters of death, and they are made to speak through the ventriloquial medium of the priest. Then they are placed on the goblets reserved for them, which also pass through the flames of a fire to heat them and give them life. These gobies, together with the one containing the gross bonage, can either be kept by the initiate or given into the safe keeping of the priest. The novice is now called the Hosini Kanza, literally the initiated spouse of the god. These rites accomplish a number of different things. They emphasize the misery and malice of the world and the sickness of the novice. Seclusion allows the sickness to be incubated and to hatch out as a loa, which becomes the master of the novice's head. His gross bonange is separated from him and placed on a gavi. So are the spirits of the dead. Much as the centipede is put into a bottle of rum, this means that he is protected from further infection and can make use of the spiritual principles involved through ritual forms. He becomes familiar with the complicated rites of voodoo and becomes one of the congregation. Finally, he learns how to endure the fear of disassociation and the pain of possession. The rites, in fact, spell out a number of images which carry him through the process. Dissociation at first is not a pleasant experience, being heralded by giddiness, the unstinging of the limbs, and the mounting to the head of a nauseated darkness. It can be brought on in an uninitiated person by the atmosphere of a ceremony, and he will stagger about as though in the throes of a sesame without being fully possessed by Aloha. This state is often personified by the lower grand boys, a silent and speechless entity who can only grunt and gibber, and is referred to in the song about the fellings of the mapu tree, which is cargo of eagle spirits. In the initiation of priests, the novice is made to stand with his back against the central post of the temple, which down which the lower are held to come when they are invoked. This post is sacred to Lekita, guardian of the passage between this world and the other, and he is sometimes called Legba Grambo's Shemin, led by the path of the great tree. This tree is also equated with the backbone, but for the lower to come down this tree, its guardian, the gross banang, must be displaced. In ritual terms, it occupies the nape of the neck, and psychologically, it is represented by a large number of postural reflexes, which affect the eyes, the neck, the spinal column, and the heartbeat. Subvert these reflexes by suggestion, theoretically, rhythm, dancing, drumming, and strong emotions, and dissociation sets in. The emotions and dissociation set in the body, feeling like a failed tree. But after training, the dormant energies represented by the lower can inhabit the place the gross bond ang was vacated. And the body is held upright around the central post, sacred to Legba. This is to be possessed by a Loa, though they live in water, are fiery but by nature, and to test the novice's ability to contain his influx of energy without going mad, he is made to grasp a boiling pace and to have his limbs washed by flame. The term Hasi, spouse of the god, is also significant in Haiti. Lack of social organizations start in the family. Women belong to be married properly, but all they usually achieve is the status of a common wife or placee. At regular marriages, the bride is received at her husband's home by a group of young girls singing Catholic verses against voodoo, and plaçage, whose refrain goes place, 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 place. Many properly married, some women do not even become placé, but turned into Juanesses, good time girls who have a financial upstanding with their lovers, or even boozing prostitutes, and they will often turn to voodoo to keep their suitors' adores aflame, to procure abortions, or just to maintain the clientele. They and the womanizing men excuse their behavior as saying it is the Loa who make them do it, who prevent them from marrying or from keeping a partner more than a week or so. Many of them are overtaken during sleep by erotic dreams in which the Loa possesses them sexually with such sweetness that they will have nothing to do with lovemaking for days afterward. Curiously enough, women are often made love to by Urzali, the goddess of love, who comes to them in masculine form. This is not surprising to find that many of them indulge in homosexual play as well. The sexuality of the lower produce sentiments of a particular kind. At ordinary chances, for instance, it is not unknown for a man to be overwhelmed by the sexual advances of a woman dancing with him so that he falls to the floor in an orgasmic disassociation. The proper treatment for this is for nocturnal visits by the Loa is to set 1 or 2 nights apart for them every week when the sufferer sleeps alone. If he or she is married and the spouse objects to such an interruption of his pleasures, a full-blown sentiment may well erupt with disastrous result. But even if this does not happen, the Loa may be pressing it in its attentions that it demands to be married in proper style. This occurs at a voodoo temple where the loa is invoked to possess an attendant. The marriage ceremony is performed with the human spouse. Rings are exchanged and a document drawn up and attested. These marriages do not always stop the lecherous behavior of the human spouses. Sometimes, indeed, it seems they encourage it by giving a religious justification. Priests are certainly not above using sexual magic for their own advantage. For instance, by always lying on their backs when they make love in order to be possessed in the act of possession. It is also said that they sleep with their novices during the initiation rites, and though this is probably sure slander, what does often occur is that the priest uses his position to keep with the women in his congregation, who are by no means averse to attentions, and that priestesses who often started in life as Juanesses use their old arts to enlarge the circle of their faithful. In addition, the Huasines, who have made the temple the center of their life and attend all the rites of the singers and dancers, frequently access temple prostitutes and indulge in small perversions against themselves. This is logical enough if the auntie is a spouse of the god, and if the temple is the god's house. A consequence very much to the advantage of the priest is that he can bring various pressures to bear on those whom he bounds, harness, sleep, who also provide him with a great deal of interesting gossip which he can turn to good advantage when he has to diagnose an illness. The lowest most often concerned in these marriages are perhaps Ogon and Urzuli, but underlying all these matters is Gude, a collective title for the cemetery spirits, whose king is Baron Samedi. The Baron is the first person to be buried in a churchyard. His female counterpart is called Mom Brigitte, and Guidi was the first soul to be drawn up out of the waters of death by Legba. Though he can and does appear in any ceremony, being a greedy and tricky spirit whose prerogative is to devour the offerings made to any lower before they get at it. He is dominant on All Souls Day, and when he possesses a large number of women who will go flocking into the cemeteries in this honor. They dress in black and purple, sing cold, lascivious songs, and using a stick as a mock penis, dance the banda. This dance is highly suggestive and combines sexual fascination with a scorn for pleasure and willful contempt of love. That women are special mounts for the Guides at this moment suggests that they are getting their own back against the men who usually dominate them. It also shows the close and universal connection between death, magic, and sexuality. It is one of the priest's duties to control this power, and he does it by means of the Asun, a gourd rattle filled with pebbles, snake bones, earth from a cemetery, and magical powers, and circled by a network of colored beads and snake vertebrae. With this instrument, he can command the dead and bring them out of the waters. He can inflame and control the Buddhists, and he can master the living by beating out the rhythms which the drums then pick up and to which the attendants dance. In theory, the use of the asan should go together with the gift of a spiritual power known as la prise de yux, the taking hold of the eyes. This allows the priest to remain conscious while the lower possesses themselves of his being, unlike minor initiates who black out when they are written and who have no memory of what they did when possessed. The state is marked by a sensation of weight on the neck or shoulders and a feeling of enormous power. The priest can hear the lower whispering in his ear, and he is endowed with second light and other paranormal powers. So, alas, say there who have undergone la prise de luxe, and those who have witnesses its effect, and it may well be that their claims are sometimes justified. Dissociation, possession, marriage to the gods, and the prize de yeux. These are the central facts around which many diverse ceremonies of voodoo are organized, and the superstitions also. Voodoo treats the invisibles as enemies to be made friends of, and power to be used, and the supernatural as a disease to be turned to good account. To do so, the priest must use his left hand as well as his right hand. That is, he must know as much about black magic as he does about white magic, and keep both in the context of the religion. What he does is sometimes cruel and often alarming, besides mystifying in the good and bad senses of the word. But then the gods that the magicians serve are jealous as well as powerful, and those who enter their mysteries must expect to pay the price. I hope y'all liked it.